Expired. Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The outrage here has been absolutely unhinged. As we've seen in the media, we're seeing Politico, who's laying folks off, and as they're being defunded of American tax dollars, they can no longer sustain themselves. And so the outrage is just going to continue from those who are no longer going to be able to support their businesses from American taxpayers, and we simply want accountability. We want oversight. This is the Oversight Committee, and unfortunately, Congress has done a crap job of oversight and accountability over quite some time, I would say decades, and that is why we have this new commission that is created, and Americans are grateful for it. President Trump campaigned on having this DOGE commission to have oversight and accountability, and it is our responsibility to codify what happens. I am pleased with the expedited efforts that have taken place to really get this out in the open and expose to the American people what their money is actually being sent to. And let's just be honest with the American people. Unelected bureaucrats have been funneling their hard-earned taxpayer dollars to ridiculous and even malicious causes. DOGE is doing the hard work to uncover the truth and make our government work for the people rather than funding policies that are actively hurting them. For example, Dr. Resch, in your testimony, you state that the recommendations from the Department of Government Efficiency will exacerbate public health crises. How is that the case when DOGE is advocating to defund EcoHealth Alliance, which was involved in the research in the Wuhan lab that created coronavirus, that created this global pandemic that killed people and ended the livelihoods of many others?
My statement was in reference to across-the-board firings without specific
I think government employees have been given the option. They can have an.
And those that will be given the option will be more competitive on a private market basis than those that stay. So then you'll be losing your best public employees.
Were our best public employees at the Wuhan lab of virology? Were those our best employees? Was that where our funding was going, to the best and the brightest who started a global pandemic?
I'm saying when you make a 20% across the cut without any
I think there's been a lot of inefficiencies, and I'm excited to see where this goes and the exposure of that. And Dr. Resch, the last administration weaponized NGOs to aid and abet illegal aliens across and within the interior of the United States. We saw millions of taxpayer dollars being funneled to NGOs that were spent on plane and bus tickets, hotel rooms, and even to coach illegal aliens on how to illegally stay in the country. Heck, we have a congresswoman who is currently coaching illegal aliens on how to stay in the country, what terms to use, even if they are untruthful. Now, Dr. Resch, how does transporting millions of unvetted illegal aliens into our country make America safer? And how does stopping the funding of those NGOs harm America?
That is tangential and irrelevant to myself.
Oh, it is not irrelevant. Let's go through the list of relevancy, shall we? When we have open borders allowing millions of illegal aliens coming into our country unvetted, then the relevancy is in terms of Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungary, Rachel Morin, Ruby Garcia, Elizabeth Medina, and I could go on and on and on and on with the American citizens who were killed at the hands of illegal aliens. So I think it's pretty relevant to say we need to look into these NGOs and what they are doing with these unvetted illegal aliens coming into our country and remaining into our country. Would you agree? Does that bring some relevancy to the topic, sir?
Not to workforce cuts across the American public service.
Well, but we're also talking about the funding that is going out. We are cutting spending at an executive level, and I hope that we codify all of that here within these chambers to ensure that it doesn't go out again. Now, in your testimony, you also mentioned that DOGE proposals reflect an agenda to dismantle professional government. According to you, this is fundamentally at odds with the principles of democratic governance. In November, President Trump won by a decisive mandate promising to maximize governmental efficiency and productivity. And how are actions, these actions fulfilling the president's campaign promises fundamentally at odds with the principles of democratic governance? And while my time is running out, I want you to answer that, sir. But we hear about unelected folks. Democrats didn't even get a chance to vote for their own presidential candidate in their primary. So don't talk to me about unelected people actually being involved in the decisions in this country. But I would like to hear how that's at odds, sir.
I have no response to that.
Well, that's
Mr.
kind of
Chairman, the gentlelady.
I yield. Thank you.
I will now yield to Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate your advocacy on this and protecting so many animals against this, as we've heard, savage research that has been taking place not only in the United States, but all throughout the world. And I want to thank our witnesses today for your boldness to come out, because it seems like anytime we expose millions and billions even of dollars that are spent towards ridiculous research programs or just organizations themselves, we are lashed out at, we're called crazy and conspiracists. And I want to thank you so much for taking a bold step. I want to thank you for the White Coat Waste Project, because this is not only saving precious beagles' lives, but really exposing to the American taxpayer where their money is going. And I think we all want to be good stewards of our tax money. We are responsible for those tax dollars here in Congress, and it's our responsibility to be stewards and overseers of that. So I'm grateful for DOGE to come in alongside of us to help expose some of this and kind of get those wheels turning. But just for the folks back home real quick before I get into my questions, I want to just highlight 1 million seconds is 11.5 days. 1 billion seconds is 31 years and 7 months. It's like this is a huge difference. So when we're talking about billions of dollars going towards the cruelty of animals, it is much larger than what it sounds, because it's been so watered down to hear that Congress is spending millions or billions or even trillions of dollars. God forbid if we find out what comes after a trillion, we'll start spending that too. But Mr. Goodman, since 1998, how much do you believe that the federal government has spent on animal cruelty testing?
Thank you for the question. That's, as we've been discussing, it's tough because there's not a lot of transparency about actually how much tax dollars are being spent. I would say we're probably looking at $1 trillion in spending by NIH since '98, and if about 47% of that is used for experiments on animals, $500 billion could have potentially been spent on animal testing since 1998.
That is an extreme number. Thank you for that. And Mr. Goodman, how much money do you think that NIAID wasted on unethical and useless and abusive testing? I would imagine it's about the same, because none of this has been very useful or effective.
Yeah, so Dr. Fauci ran NIAID from 1984 to 2022, and when he left at the end of 2022, it had a $6.5 billion budget. Again, we don't know what percentage of that was for animal testing, but probably higher than the average across NIH. And I just want to make a note here that Dr. Fauci, and I don't have any issue with him outside of his abuse of animals, he was not just a paper pusher. He was personally involved in animal experimentation, experimenting on monkeys, giving them HIV-like viruses until the day he left NIH. He was the lead investigator on grants that were funded by taxpayers to do that. And he started his career by infecting chimpanzees with HIV and promising we were going to have an AIDS vaccine back in the 80s, which we never got because, as you mentioned, they don't get HIV, they don't get AIDS, they don't get sick. So there's been an enormous amount of waste and abuse, and his legacy, unfortunately, he's gone from government, but his legacy at NIAID lives on.
Yes, fortunately, he has gone from government, but that doesn't prevent us from holding him accountable for not only the wasteful spending, but the cruel tests that have taken place over the years. So maybe you answered my next question. How many of these treatments have found cures in humans that come from this cruel kind of testing?
Virtually none. You know, we've heard the statistics today, and any that have come, it's out of pure dumb luck, and they're the exception, not the rule, because animal experiments are a dead end. It's pure chance if something good comes out of it.
And so I'm seeing here with NIAID, the budget of spending $6.5 billion in taxpayer money. It's been used to pay EcoHealth Alliance to import hundreds of Asian bats into the U.S. for new viruses in labs in Colorado run by the Wuhan-linked researchers. That's $6.7 billion for the Colorado State University in Fort Collins to research bats here in America. And we've also sent billions of taxpayer dollars to unaccountable labs in China and other foreign countries implant aborted baby parts into lab animals. Have you heard of that sort of research?
Yeah, we did an analysis a few years ago showing that over 90% of experiments with using human fetal tissue and putting them involved animals were funded by Fauci's NIAID.
Do you know where they're getting the aborted human fetal tissue?
A lot of it is happening at colleges and universities that have affiliated hospitals that perform that procedure.
Madam Chair, I think we need to look into that as well. My time has expired. I apologize to our other witnesses. I did have questions for you, but I'll submit those in writing. Thank you.
The gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this bill to the floor. And I want to thank also the lead sponsor of this bill, my colleague from Texas, August Pfluger. I rise in support of the Protecting American Energy Production Act. This bill will protect American oil and natural gas production by preventing any president from declaring a moratorium on hydraulic fracturing. 4 years ago, Joe Biden waged an all-out war on American energy production, from shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline, canceling oil and gas leases on millions of acres, locking up federal lands, threatening Colorado energy jobs, canceling Colorado energy jobs, and countless other anti-energy measures that have contributed to gas prices and inflation reaching record levels. The American people spoke in November. They spoke loud and they spoke very clearly. They resoundingly said, "Drill, baby, drill." I am proud of President Trump's executive orders to get our country back in the right direction for drilling, but it is up to us in the House now to do our part and pass legislation to codify what President Trump is doing boldly each and every day in the White House. I am proud of his new Energy Secretary, Chris Wright from Colorado, and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. They have already started to make good on their promises to unleash American energy and put energy workers in my home state of Colorado back to work. We are tired of relying on OPEC and our adversaries for energy. It's time to bring back and rely on the American roughneck. It is time to terminate the Green New Scam. President Trump is committed to doing that. And we hear about subsidies for oil and gas from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. But what the American people aren't hearing is the $235 billion to clean energy production tax credits, $110 billion to clean energy investment tax credits, EV tax credits at $316 billion, $203 billion to advance manufacturing production tax, and many more, equaling over $1 trillion tax dollars. We can end the Green New Scam. We can bring back oil and gas. My colleague and freshman from Colorado, Congressman Jeff Hurd, has the local act to bring the BLM headquarters back to Colorado so we have boots on the ground and can drill, baby, drill. I yield.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves, and the gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the NIH probably should change their acronym to FOD, Faces of Death. This very much sounds like a show that my mother would not let me watch as a child. And, just hearing how egregious this is, there's many more things that I have listed here. Of course, we've heard of the beagles who were in the mesh cages. I don't know if their vocal cords were paralyzed or if they were removed, but they were prevented from barking, correct?
Yeah. There was a project that Dr. Fauci funded. Actually, we worked with Chairwoman Mace to expose that they were doing drug testing where they were poisoning puppies with massive doses of drugs, and the laboratory cut there was actually a line item in the contract for a cordectomy.
Wow.
To cut the vocal cords so the dogs would not bark in the lab.
Wow. And so we've heard that. We've heard of electroshock therapy, even to the point where cats had their spinal cords exposed, their back sliced open, and that electroshock therapy was given to test for erectile dysfunction and cognitive issues and so many other things. And so I ended my last round of questioning talking about the implantation of aborted fetal tissues. And you said that universities partner with clinics who are performing these abortions. Now, how does that process work and who funds that? Are the mothers of these aborted babies giving permission? Do they know it's taking place? Is there taxpayer funding in the crosshairs of that other than the actual testing itself?
That's outside of my wheelhouse.
Okay, that again, Madam Chair, I think this is something we should look into. I would love to see just what permissions are granted and given for that. I know that we have some regulatory framework within the Department of Health and Human Services and the Public Health Service Act, and regulations include prohibitions on buying or selling the tissue of valuable consideration, but also, but they allow for compensation for costs associated with the tissue handling. And so I would love to look into that. So not only can we prevent the cruelty in the animals like these beautiful beagles we see here today, but also even our children who are being harmed in this process as well, for whatever reason it may be. But Madam Chair, I would love to continue to work with you on this and hold Dr. Fauci, the NIH, NIAID, and everyone else accountable for this wasteful spending, and I yield.
Thank you. I now.
November 5th, President Trump received a mandate from the American people. He overwhelmingly won the Electoral College vote. He won the popular vote, the first time in 2 decades a Republican has done that. And the mandate is to cut waste, fraud, really it's theft, not just fraud, and abuse from the federal government, within the federal government, and to be good stewards of the tax dollars that come in. When we're over $36 trillion in debt, it is our responsibility to have oversight and accountability and to rein in this spending. Now today, I am proud to join my friend from Tennessee, Congressman Tim Burchett. If y'all didn't know, he's the 435th most powerful member of Congress. And I think this legislation is maybe even going to get him to rank a little bit higher. But we have got to get this to the floor for a vote. And as my friend, Mr. Burchett says, if our enemies can hate us for free. We don't have to pay them for them to hate us. They are a terrorist organization. And under Joe Biden's leadership, we surrendered to the Taliban. 13 brave service members were left behind, lost their lives. I called Joe Biden out on the House floor at the State of the Union address here in Congress, and I'll do it again. I will remind Joe Biden and his administration every day, if I have to, that he is responsible for the death of 13 of our service members. $7 billion worth of weapons and equipment were left behind during that botched, horrible embarrassment of a withdrawal from Afghanistan. And this withdrawal was a national embarrassment and a tragedy of the highest order, particularly for those families who continue to grieve the loss of their loved ones. And in addition to that, House Republicans uncovered that Secretary Blinken used taxpayer dollars to send weekly cash payments of around $400 million to the Afghanistan Central Bank. One of the best ways to protect the American people from these terrorists is to stop the flow of money that is going to them. And unfortunately, for the Taliban, there is a new sheriff in town. President Trump has promised to rebuild our military and stand up to our adversaries by keeping our armed forces strong and counter rising threats from terrorists, not continue to fund them. They can go fund themselves. Let put this common sense bill that puts America first to the floor for a vote. I am proud to support it, and let's move the No Tax Dollars for Terrorists Act through the House and the Senate and to President Trump's desk that is hopefully now debugged from listening devices, and let's get it signed into law. Mr. Burchett, thank you.
And next, my dear friend Ralph.
Article and study that says how China became the world's leader on renewable energy. The other one is a New York Times article entitled Why Trump's Clean Energy Rollbacks Could Derail a Factory Boom.
Both articles be submitted without objection. I now recognize the lady from Colorado, Ms. Boebert, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Gunasakara, I just want to commend you so much. Thank you for giving such straightforward answers. I was not hearing of the outcries from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle when our Keystone XL pipeliners were laid off, when my district was regulated into poverty, when oil and gas was pushed out by overregulation and Green New Deal policies. I did not hear the outcry for veterans or service members who were discharged from the military because they refused to take a trial vaccine that was not that we didn't know the effects of. I didn't hear the outcry for small businesses that went under and were not able to reopen. Many people lost their jobs over poor regulations and overregulation. So thank you so much for giving clear and concise answers. We do have an overgrown and bloated government, and DOGE is absolutely exposing that and all of the waste, fraud, or theft and abuse that is taking place with our American tax dollars. So sorry, I don't have a question for you, but I wanted to just say thank you so much for being here and for your expertise. Mr. Epstein, we've heard a lot today about bird flu, that obviously that was under Joe Biden and his decision. We've heard about the Green New Deal. We heard that America needs to lead on green new energy, really this green new scam. And we kind of can't when we're dependent on China and we're getting, our solar panels from them and they're using coal-fired energy to create their own energy, and we are kind of left suffering. Mr. Epstein, are there any myths that you've heard today in this hearing room that you would like to address, such as, frankly, some of the BS that I've heard from colleagues here and even one of our witnesses?
So yeah, let me just take, what I think is the overall myth is this idea that we need to impose dramatic restrictions on fossil fuels and give dramatic subsidies to unreliable solar and wind, as well as other uncompetitive forms of energy, in order to prevent a climate crisis / compete with China. That's sort of the overall thing. So just to break it down quickly, I don't know why we haven't learned from every other industry that's ever existed, but the way you get the best, cheapest, most reliable product is you leave people free to compete. You don't restrict the things that work and subsidize the things that don't, but we're magically pretending in energy that somehow works. I mean, imagine you outlawed iPhone and Android and just let random people with unreliable phones produce phones and you subsidize them. It makes no sense. So the laws of economics apply here just as well as anywhere else. In terms of averting an alleged climate crisis, I've documented human beings are so resilient from climate that we are safer than ever from climate. Our resilience is rooted in fossil fuels. So if we restrict fossil fuels, we make ourselves less resilient. We will reverse what's been an incredible decline in climate-related disaster deaths. So one is there is no climate crisis to avert. But then number two is by screwing up American energy, you do nothing to reduce global emissions because the emissions just get offshore to China and to more competitive economies, which brings me to China. And do we need to compete with them in renewables? And Ranking Member Frost mentioned a certain quote unquote study from Yale about this. And the issue is China is becoming the leader in fossil fuels. And one of their leading uses of fossil fuels is to produce overpriced, unreliable energy infrastructure that they sell to us and that we are incredibly dependent upon. So the whole thing is wrong, and what we need is very simple. We just need energy freedom. So we need the freedom for all forms of energy to compete. I think somebody mentioned we need technology-neutral standards for our grid. That's very important. We don't want to favor or disfavor any form of energy. But if we do that, given current economic realities, that's going to mean a lot of fossil fuels here and around the world. And overall, that's really good for people because a world with a lot of energy can handle any climate, but a world without much energy can't handle any climate or really anything else. Thank you.
Mr. Epstein, I want to give you the last 30 seconds or so to talk about the EPA, as you mentioned in your testimony, just things that they need to rescind and do better with in this new administration. We have Administrator Lee Zeldin now at the EPA, and I think he'll do a fantastic job. And hopefully he's read your books, The Moral Case of Fossil Fuel, Fossil Future. Hopefully he has your Alex AI app. I think that's a great tool for energy information, and it's actually reliable, kind of like the fossil fuel energy that we are discussing today. So if you want to use these last seconds, I used most of them.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's in my testimony. The quick things I would just say are you need to be objective about the benefits of any of these restrictions, which are generally overblown, and you need to be very realistic about the costs, which are usually underestimated. And yeah, check out alexepstein.ai, free to use for everyone, and you could just use it dynamically and learn a lot about this testimony topic. Thank you.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Ansari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I recognize Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Mike Johnston, I hope we can start off on a level field of agreement here. So in your testimony, you said that locals were asking Denver, what will you do? When they saw 10 to 11 buses coming in a day and 42,000 illegal aliens entering their city. Denver, what will you do? And in a Fox 31 interview in January, you blamed state law for not allowing the city of Denver to coordinate with ICE, resulting in Denver being a sanctuary city, saying, quote, the whole state is bound by our state law in this, which is pretty consistent in some of these practices, like everywhere in the state. We don't honor ICE detainers, end quote. I've demanded Governor Jared Polis and the Colorado State Legislature to repeal them. Douglas County has led on a lawsuit to get those laws repealed. So, Mr. Mayor, would you join me today in calling and demanding that these sanctuary policies, these Colorado state laws, be repealed?
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Yes or no, Mr. Mayor?
Pardon?
Yes or no? Will you join me?
I do not believe the detainer law needs to be changed. So I can tell you what Denver
Okay,
does
so you
right now.
don't want them to coordinate with ICE, but yet you're blaming the state of Colorado for those policies. It's a statewide law. It's not a Denver law. And you're blaming the state of Colorado for the law, yet you will not call for that law to be repealed. Correct? Yes or no?
We do coordinate with ICE presently. I'm happy to tell you what we do on that. So we've honored detainer requests more than 1,226 times over the last
What about
years.
before a warrant? There are many issues before a warrant.
So what happens is if ICE sends us a detainer request,
Well, you have local law enforcement officers, Mr. Mayor, who are unable to coordinate with ICE to even get the initial warrant. They aren't allowed to tell them that they are illegal aliens. So unfortunately, you won't join me in asking for this law, demanding that this law be repealed. So let's keep going. In 2017, Denver passed an ordinance that ensured any city employee who spoke with federal immigration authorities would be fired, among other policies that have led to local and national media outlets to call Denver a sanctuary city. So now let me ask you, would a city employee be fired for communicating with anyone from the EPA?
Right now, Congresswoman, our policy is we don't ask people's status.
Would any city employee be fired for communicating and coordinating, talking with an agent from the EPA, a federal employee?
Not to my knowledge, Congresswoman.
What about Health and Human Services? Would they get fired for talking with someone from Health and Human Services?
Not to my knowledge, Congresswoman.
So they would only be fired for talking to federal law enforcement officers?
No, that's incorrect, Congresswoman.
This is an ordinance
city employees do,
Denver
in fact,
passed in 2017, Mr. Mayor.
Our city employees do, in fact, communicate with ICE. We do coordinate on multiple things with ICE. For instance, if there is a violent criminal warrant in the city, we
No,
pursue that
we're
warrant
talking
together.
before the warrants, Mr. Mayor. There are issues happening before warrants are issued, and local law enforcement officers are unable to coordinate because there is no warrant. And your ordinance says that a city employee would be fired for communicating with federal law enforcement. So you've been mayor for 600 days. Have you ever called for that ordinance to be repealed?
We are not unable to coordinate with ICE right now. We are in communication with ICE right now.
Only if there is a warrant, but I'm talking prior to the warrant.
We wouldn't have a reason to coordinate.
Because you
prior
don't know
to
if they're
warrant.
illegal, because you are unable to coordinate until there is a warrant. So that's why this ordinance needs to be repealed. So now the 600 days, there's been no time to ask for this to be repealed. You did have a newcomer's playbook, 25 pages. You had time to put that together. And you had time to agree with the city council to authorize up to $2 million to pay Joe Biden's former lawyer, his law firm, to help cover your ass for Denver's sanctuary city policies for this hearing, correct?
Thank you, Congresswoman. We have counsel.
Did you
to
authorize
support-
that spending?
We have counsel to support this committee's investigation into any documents you may have. That is a year-long contract for the 13,000 city employees.
And your budget
you may
is
request documents from.
seriously declining. Denver Magazine reported that Denver has spent $7.5 million on shipping illegal aliens to other destinations. Mayor Adams, did Mayor Johnston ever coordinate with you and tell you that he was shipping illegal aliens to your city?
We coordinated in communication around the entire asylum seeker issue in our cities.
So I've heard that Denver crime went down. Well, Aurora's crime went up because you were also shipping them to Aurora. And we have documentation that I don't have time to discuss here in this hearing that proves you were shipping illegal aliens to Aurora. Their crime was increasing while you were hiding under laws that you will not demand be repealed, ordinance from your city. And then crime was going up from Trinidad Aragua gangs vandalizing apartment owners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hope that we can get this
We have a
resolved in
5-minute
Colorado.
rule, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Representative Boebert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much to our witnesses here who came to testify on border policies and technologies. I was excited to see President Trump put out a post, a Truth on Truth Social, that said the month of February, my first full month in office, had the lowest number of illegal immigrants trying to enter our country in history by far. There were only 8,326 apprehensions of illegals by Border Patrol at the U.S.-Mexico border, all of whom were quickly ejected from our nation or, when necessary, prosecuted for crimes against the United States of America. This means that very few people came. The invasion of our country is over. In comparison, under Joe Biden, there were 300,000 illegals crossing in 1 month, and virtually all of them were released into our country. Thanks to the Trump administration policies, the border is closed to all illegal aliens, immigrants is what he put. Anyone who tries to illegally enter the USA will face significant criminal penalties and immediate deportation. I think the President Trump and his team, Secretary Noem and Border Czar Tom Homan, have done a fantastic job of turning chaos at our southern border into control. Mr. Fabricatore, welcome from the great state of Colorado. I wanted to ask you some questions about Colorado's sanctuary policies that prevent ICE from coordinating with local law enforcement agents, and maybe how that had an impact on the Trinidad Aragua presence that we saw in Aurora.
Thank you, ma'am. So yes, the sanctuary policies in the state of Colorado, as you know, there's been many that have been passed since 2013 that limit cooperation with Immigration Customs Enforcement. And that even limits the amount of data that ICE is allowed to get. This includes DMV records, the State Department of Labor. So this keeps ICE from being able to identify criminal illegal aliens easily and go out on the street and arrest them. When you have those limitations, that's when you're going to see an increase in crime like we saw with Trinidad Aragua over the last couple of months, because ICE just simply is not getting the data that's necessary to be able to target these criminal illegal aliens and remove them from the streets quickly.
Yes, and do you believe that using modern tracking technology would have helped secure our border and even our cities in the state of Colorado?
It definitely would have helped. It's something that the ERO officers need in order to be able to facilitate making arrests quickly, which is what we want to do. We don't want to give illegal criminal aliens an opportunity to commit more crimes in the U.S. We want to arrest them as quickly as we can.
Yes, and so with the CBP One app and discussing improvements to the app, do you think that there's a possibility for self-deportation, some sort of incentive to self-deport using the app and arrive at a location to get a one-way ticket home?
If we can use the app to enter, we can use that app to exit. So absolutely, we can develop that technology to allow people to self-deport. And that way, families don't have to be separated. They can go right through the CBP One app, they can get on the app, they can do an exit, we can have that information readily available, and they can self-deport.
Thank you. And Mr. Fabricatore, under the failed Biden regime, how many criminal illegal aliens were able to evade ICE apprehensions because you were all restricted from using the right tools and technologies and authorities?
So thousands, I mean, and millions even. I mean, we have 1.4 million on the non-detained docket of final orders right now, which, you know, they went and saw an immigration judge, immigration judge said, you must leave. And they even defied an immigration judge's order. So these cases are stacking up. It's something that needs to be taken care of, and under this administration, it will be.
And Mr. Fabricatore, the Biden administration focused on reducing detention rates rather than increasing surveillance. Hundreds of heinous acts were committed by violent criminal aliens. Do you think that reducing detention rates rather than increasing surveillance makes our borders more or less safe, secure?
No, we need an increased detention rate, absolutely. I think we're at 41,000 beds right now. I know President Trump would like to double, if not even have more, up to 100,000 beds. This is what we need. In order to have the deportation process be successful, we need those beds in place.
Thank you. And I'm certainly proud of the initiative that President Trump has put forward. And like I said, borders are Tom Homan, and I know that you have worked with him in the past, and I hope to see you alongside him in the future as well. And we have Secretary Noem doing a great job. And Mr. Fabricatore, if you got 5 seconds that you want to say something, it's yours.
Thank you. Yes, we need this technology. ERO needs this technology. They need the money, and they need the beds.
Thank you, Mr. Fabricatore.
Thank you.
Recognized for 5 minutes for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Humir, so we've seen under the Biden administration the failed open border policies that really fueled and exasperated the immigration crisis, the illegal immigration crisis in my home state of Colorado. And the previous administration released at least 11 million illegal aliens and at least 100 known terrorists, and estimates indicate 250,000 to 585,000 pounds of fentanyl into our communities, Colorado being the #2 state in the nation for fentanyl overdoses, really fentanyl poisoning. Most of these folks aren't seeking after fentanyl, but they're being tricked into taking it. How do you believe that the Biden administration's policies empowered terrorists and these terrorist organizations like Tren de Aragua to commit violent crimes against American citizens, especially in places like Colorado and Aurora?
The Biden administration's immigration and border policies provided a magnet for all kinds of criminals and terrorists to basically say the border's open, we're going to move in, and that empowered the enemies and adversaries of the United States, including nation states, to then steer those migrants to be able to come into our country. Ms. Congressman, you mentioned the Tren de Aragua. The Tren de Aragua is uniquely a phenomenon of the Biden administration. It did not exist inside the United States prior to 2021. In fact, most of the Venezuelan migration that was leaving that country since 2014 fled south, through South America. But because the Venezuelan government was able to establish both a land bridge through the Darien Gap, a once uncrossable border between Panama and Colombia, and an air bridge into Mexico, they timed that because they knew that President Biden was going to open the border. Now we have Tren de Aragua in 23 states, including your state of Colorado, and they've captured, killed, and raped all kinds of Americans throughout the country.
Thank you for highlighting that this is a new problem that we weren't encountering before with this gang presence in our country. And now, recent reports have been about leaks taking place within law enforcement, sensitive information detailing the ICE raids targeting illegal criminal aliens. How do these leaks affect law enforcement efforts to keep the country safe?
I'm familiar with the leak that happened in your state in Colorado. That was a major raid. That was more than 400 agents that were deployed to basically take down the Tren de Aragua and apartment complexes. That not only puts at risk the law enforcement officials that are engaged in that raid, but it puts at risk the entire community because it allows that gang to figure out the leaks, the vulnerabilities in our law enforcement system. What I'm very concerned about, the Tren de Aragua in particular, is very adept at co-opting government officials. They've done this in countries all throughout South America because they use this later to be able to create media apparatuses, other kinds of propaganda to defend their interests, which is through illegal migration.
Yes, and a question that I did want to ask you, how does it help or hurt when members of Congress see this and engage in the leaks and prop them up and then even have special town hall-like events where they're telling illegal aliens how to remain in the country?
Well, they're either wittingly or unwittingly aligning themselves with that transnational criminal organization's strategic objectives.
Thank you. Ms. Doyle, in Aurora, Colorado, we've been talking about the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, and they were tied to incidents at multiple apartment complexes where violent gangs, they had events like home evasions, shootings, kidnappings, assaults, and extortion for rent payments. And just last year, 9 suspected TDA members were charged after a violent home invasion into an apartment complex and left 2 victims seriously injured. As a legal advisor under the Biden administration, did you ever advise anyone that we should be doing something to prevent this kind of gang activity in our communities?
I'm unable to discuss due to my ethical obligations to confidentiality any advice I give.
Are you not here as a principal legal advisor?
But I cannot break my confidentiality for any specific advice. I will tell you that we always focused on national security and public safety and supported the brave and hardworking law enforcement officers of Immigration Customs Enforcement and Homeland Security Investigation.
Did you ever advocate for coordination between federal law enforcement officers and local and state law enforcement officers?
Yes.
Well, we have in Denver and in Colorado 2 different multiple statutes that prevent that coordination. So were there conversations, and are you still advocating, if you were, to have those sanctuary policy laws removed so we can have that coordination?
Each community should be able to determine themselves what works for their community. As we mentioned, holding Boston up as the safest large city in the country.
Well, I think our federal laws
would
keep our communities the safest. Our federal laws are on the books and say that they should require state and local law enforcement officers to collaborate with federal immigration authorities.
I think
However, the Biden administration empowered sanctuary cities, and as a legal advisor, I would just assume that you were part of the empowering of places like Denver to pass these ordinances. Is that true?
Local mayors, cities, towns, and the states should be able to determine their own policies and their own approaches. And while we work for ICE, yes, we always encouraged cooperation.
I believe federal law should be followed at all costs. Thank you, ma'am. My time has expired.
The gentlelady yields.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would caution my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to refrain from making fun of the Gulf of America, because next up, may end up be the District of America that we're working on. So just, keep the jokes at bay, and, maybe we'll just stick with the Gulf of America for now. And I do want to just take a personal moment and recognize we have former Congresswoman Yvette Harrell from Hi, Yvette. She was a distinct member on this committee, and she's here in the room with us today. So I just wanted to say hello to you, Yvette. Mr. Caravilla, do you know the current gray wolf population total?
Pardon?
Do you know the total population of the gray wolf currently?
No, I don't think anybody knows. There's estimates that range.
Estimates of about 6,000. It's a pretty widely adopted estimate that we have about 6,000 gray wolves in the lower 48. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, about 6,000 to 8,000 is
great. You have a number even higher than me, which is well above like any regional numbers that we were looking at for the Endangered Species Act. So would you consider 6,000 to 8,000 gray wolves being the gray wolf being fully recovered?
I absolutely would not. 6,000 to 8,000 when there were when there were 500,000 before is not enough, and it's really about their ecological function. They're called keystone species because they reduce erosion.
So I think 6,000 to 8,000. Sorry, my time is limited here. I think 6,000 to 8,000 is a good number, especially when we're seeing just the amount of depredation cases taking place, of the amount of harm to our pets, to our livestock, to our wildlife. And there's been a lot of attacks on Elon Musk and the federal agencies and folks no longer being employed because of Doge efforts or whatever that may be by President Trump's requests. Don't you think this is a great time to get the federal government out of the way and return management back to the states and local tribes?
No, I think we need the expertise of these federal biologists.
So the federal government is just the end-all, be-all. We have the federal government, and they're smarter than any state management program, any tribal management program.
The best conservation is with the collaboration between federal and state.
Do these biologists benefit from being in frivolous lawsuits and held up in court rather than being in the lab and creating studies?
Most biologists want to be out in the field.
Yes, they do, but there are frivolous lawsuits that prevent them from that. And I haven't heard any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle complaining about that aspect of it, just that there may be some reduction in these employees.
Is there a question?
Well, you are saying, it's not really a question, you're saying that they want to be in the field.
Yes, the federal,
but there are these frivolous lawsuits that keep them tied up. And
I don't know if they're frivolous or not. So as a federal biologist,
thank you very much for your time. I'm going to move on to Dr. Roberts here. Do you believe that it's time to delist the gray wolf from the Endangered Species Act?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I think the science is clear on that.
And with this frivolous litigation, like the Defenders of Wildlife lawsuit, does that has it distorted the original intent of the Endangered Species Act?
Yes, I think so. The Endangered Species Act is intended to protect animals at immediate risk of extinction. And those lawsuits that you reference, if you look at those, they're primarily on procedural issues, not the issue of whether the number of animals that are on the landscape.
Yes, yeah. When the ESA is abused, I think that the intent of the act is certainly distorted as well. And Dr. Roberts, how does keeping the wolves listed harm, if it does, the conservation efforts?
Well, I think it is discouraging to states and to individuals to engage in species recovery, to be involved in working with species at peril if there's no end in sight.
And just with our last 30 seconds, Dr. Roberts, how successful have state and tribal management been at helping restore the gray wolf populations to the full recovery levels?
Well, like my colleague mentions, collaboration between the state and federal government is important, and working with the state government was an important aspect that led to the recovery of the gray wolf.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our witnesses. Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you very much. Without further ado, I'd like to recognize Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Hopefully we can stay on topic for the rest of this hearing. We seem to be wrapping up pretty close here. Mr. Stone, you wrote a book accusing LBJ of being involved in the killing of President Kennedy. Did these most recent releases confirm or negate your initial charge? Being involved in the assassination of President Kennedy.
No, I didn't. In the film, if you look closely, there's no such statements. No, I didn't. If you
Yes,
look
sir.
closely at the film, there's no. It accuses the President Johnson
Okay.
of being part of a complicit in a cover-up of the case, but not in the assassination itself, which I don't know.
What do you think that he was complicit with? Yes, sir. I'll get to you.
The cover-up. Well, how about, for starters, appointing Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, who was fired by Kennedy, to the commission itself to the Warren Commission, and he goes to almost every meeting, and he's pretty much in charge of the Warren Commission from the beginning. Alan Dulles. That's part of the evidence that points to President Johnson's either incompetence or involvement.
Mr. Morley, I think you had something to add on that.
I think you're confusing Mr. Oliver Stone with Mr. Roger Stone.
I haven't stated it yet.
Who?
Sorry.
It's Roger Stone who implicated LBJ in the assassination of the president. It's not my friend
Is that what all the
Oliver Stone.
whispers were there? I may have misinterpreted that, and I apologize for that. But there seems to be some alluding of, like you said, incompetence or some sort of involvement there on the back end. And so sorry, I'm going to move on. Mr. Morley, I would like to talk more about the CE 399 and this file. I want the American people to know what's in there, that what was recently released, how that lines up to this, and how we could get more clarity there.
I'm not familiar with the number that you mentioned.
Mr. D.
Are you talking about Commission Exhibit 399?
Yeah.
Okay.
I yield my time to Jim.
All right.
I have more questions for you too,
All right.
Mr. Morley.
Commission Exhibit 399 has a very wild trajectory, which I think any person familiar with ballistics, would question in the first place. Then the second place is it has a very, very dubious chain of custody. All right, from it was first captured at Parkland Hospital. Tomlinson and Wright, who worked there, turned it over to the Secret Service. Then the Secret Service turned over to the FBI. Any investigator would want to interview Mr. Wright because he was the security guy who turned over the bullet to the Secret Service. Well, Wright was not interviewed, and there's a good reason he wasn't interviewed. When Josiah Thompson was writing his book, 6 Seconds in Dallas, he interviewed O.P. Wright, who was the director of security at Parkland Hospital. And he said, yeah, I'm the guy who gave and Thompson put up a picture of CE 399 in front of him. And Wright said, they say that's the bullet that I turned over to the Secret Service? And he said, yes. And he says, no, I did not turn over that bullet. And he opened up the drawer, okay, and because he was in charge of the whole security thing, and he pulled out a bullet and says, this is the kind of bullet that it wasn't a hunting round, okay, all right? And so he said, and he was, by the way, he was so stupefied that after the interview, he chased Thompson down the hallway. And he said, are you sure that's the bullet I said, that they said I turned over? And he said, yes. And he just shook his head. I can't believe, he couldn't believe it.
Thank you. I would love to go into that deeper. But Mr. Morley, before my time is up, why do you believe that the CIA was surveilling Lee Harvey Oswald in the years before JFK's assassination? And what methods did the CIA use in this surveillance?
One of the documents that was released last month revealed that when Angleton put people on the list for intercepting their mail, his purpose was to approach them to be a contact or a source. So I believe that Angleton, when he put Oswald under mail surveillance, was considering using him as a contact, as a source. The means of surveillance that were used were first mail surveillance, and then Oswald came under photographic surveillance, wiretap surveillance, and contact with CIA-funded groups.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I yield.
Colorado is extended 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and bless my colleagues' hearts on the other side of the aisle. Using married women as a gotcha for voting. I've never had to bring my birth certificate to prove that I was a registered voter. I have an ID that has a different name than my birth certificate. And also, since we're using women as bait here, maybe in the next round of debates, they could explain to us exactly what a woman is. I rise in support of the SAVE Act. The American people are done messing around with a woke, weak-kneed system that lets our elections get hijacked. I am fighting for you, for me, for every American who knows our vote is sacred, and it's time to lock it down with citizens only. Let's cut the crap. Right now, you can walk up, check a box, claiming you're a citizen, and boom, you're registered for federal elections. No proof, no ID. That's not a system built on trust. It's a system vulnerable to error, fraud, and exploitation. And in Colorado, it was just expedited for the process for illegals to receive a driver's license. And in the state of Colorado, when you obtain a driver's license, you register to vote. The SAVE Act is a common sense measure designed to protect the integrity of our electoral process, and at its core, it requires proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. This isn't radical. It's not extreme. It's a basic safeguard to ensure that only those who are legally entitled to participate in our elections can do so. Let's be clear, this isn't about denying anyone's right to vote. It's about protecting the rights of every American citizen, not adding votes and subtracting American citizens' votes. I support the SAVE Act. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields her time. Gentleman reserve his
2 minutes to the gentlelady from Colorado.
Woman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the No Rogue Rulings Act, a bold and necessary step to rein in activist judges who have made it their sole mission to obstruct the agenda of President Donald J. Trump. Let's be clear about what is at stake. In November 2024, the American people gave President Trump a mandate to secure our borders, shrink a bloated federal bureaucracy, and put America first. He's acted swiftly with over 100 executive orders in just 3 months to deliver on those promises that he made to the American people. But what have we seen? Unelected judges have issued sweeping nationwide injunctions to stop him at every turn. 53 lawsuits already, halting deportations of dangerous criminal aliens, blocking cuts to wasteful spending, and tying the hands of a president doing his best to protect America. This isn't justice, it's judicial tyranny. The No Rogue Rulings Act says enough is enough. It's simple common sense fix. No single district judge should have the power to grind the entire nation to a halt with one rogue ruling. Why should a single unelected judge override the votes of 80 million Americans? This is not how our Constitution was designed. The Founding Fathers gave Congress the power to check the courts, and it's time we began using it. Take Judge James Boebert's ruling last month, halting deportations of Venezuelan gang members under the Alien Enemies Act. President Trump invoked a law from 1798 to protect our streets, and one judge decided he knows better than the commander-in-chief. It's time to take our government back from the black-robed bureaucrats. I support this bill, and I thank the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, for introducing it. I yield.
Mrs. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here to our witnesses. I just want to start by saying that the Inflation Reduction Act, the idea of it creating jobs is a myth. This is something from the federal government, and it's actually destroying our grid, and it's harming every American with inflation and less economic opportunity. The IRA is actually diverting investments to uncompetitive businesses and jobs. These businesses cannot compete in our market. It's literally one side of the government choosing winners and losers, and we are paying millions for EV jobs that pay less than the national average. The IRA disproportionately benefits China by increasing the demand for Chinese companies, and they really dominate the solar and wind supply chains and directly subsidize Chinese-owned solar and wind projects operating in the U.S. So I just wanted to clear that up. It was never about reducing inflation. The American people were lied to. It was an Inflation Expansion Act, not reduction. But onto our witnesses. Dr. McBride, do you know how much CBO originally said how much the Inflation Reduction Act would cost in renewable subsidies?
Yes, in total, including the tax side and the spending side, $370 billion for the climate programs.
$370 billion, as we are over $36 trillion in debt. And we know that the original estimates weren't correct that we were given. So what is the real cost of the green energy tax credits?
Well, the credits alone, that was about $270 billion originally estimated. Now looks to be about $1 trillion or $1.2 trillion when you include the interactions with regulations like the tailpipe rules.
Absolutely incredible. Mr. Lieberman, these renewable energy tax credits will cost the American people approximately up to $4.6 trillion by the year 2050. Will the green energy sources by themselves support the current energy requirements of the United States?
I don't know if I'd go as far as some people who say they're parasitic energy sources. That might be a little too far, but we know that wind and solar are just not available 24/7. There will always have to be a need for other energy sources to make sure that we have reliable electricity, and policies like those in the Inflation Reduction Act make it very hard to ensure reliability.
Absolutely, and I think there are many of us here who are for that all-of-the-above energy approach, but it's when we're subsidizing and promoting China, lifting them up, using the American tax dollars to pay for this, that's where we have a problem with it. Mr. Lieberman, given the growing demand for power in the U.S., what are the unintended risks to our electric grid that we're facing with these displacing proven energy methods?
Well, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, just recently released their summer assessment. They're warning about potential blackouts in the U.S. and North America over the summer. And they specifically mention times of low wind and solar. They also mentioned bringing coal offline and not replacing it with anything that's as reliable. And having followed these NERC studies for a number of years, their warnings are getting stronger and stronger, and the links that they're drawing to wind and solar are also being stronger and stronger. This is real. We saw in Spain and Portugal very serious blackouts. They're being studied. We don't have definitive answers yet. So, but those are two countries with a lot of wind and solar. We can't draw conclusions yet, but there's some real reliability risks.
Yes. And their energy sources are unreliable, and that's why we've seen it in California. We've certainly seen brownouts there. In Colorado, they've begun to shut down our coal-fired energy plants, and they want to stop mining the coal, arguably the cleanest coal in the world, right there in Colorado. And our communities are being regulated into poverty because of it. But this so-called Inflation Reduction Act, it's a disaster for our energy and the costs and the economy. It's really, this act is what has caused so many problems in increased energy prices. It was a shameful boondoggle, and it's pushing this unreliable sources, wind and solar, while taxing our dependable oil and gas. So I want to thank the witnesses for being here, and I yield.
Thank you. Thank you. I now recognize the gentlelady from Colorado, Mrs. Boebert, for five minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chilson, AI's rise, it really offers a dual lifeline, coal as a power bridge and AI as a transition engine. Do you believe that they're both crucial to keeping rural communities from collapsing?
I do. I'm more of an expert on the AI side, so I'll address that. I do think that we are seeing that intelligence in the form of connected from here, but to big data centers is a benefit across the economic spectrum, and that everybody can benefit from this. We've seen some good research that shows that, in fact, AI tools help benefit actually people who are newer or less capable in certain types of jobs to really level up their skills quickly, and they're sort of diminishing returns at the top end. And so there's been some good research on this. So I do think that across the economy, we will see huge benefits to this technology, including in rural areas that maybe have not historically received the benefits of high technology.
Awesome, thank you. And Mr. Mills, you stated that AI data centers will require the equivalent of adding an entire state's worth of power generation just in the next few years alone. I believe that that's true. And if so, how can anyone seriously argue that wind and solar are going to be enough for all of this?
Well, people do seriously argue that, Congresswoman, of course, but and it's not that it's technically impossible to build enough wind and solar and batteries. It's these things, engineers can do a lot of things if you give them enough money. The issues are really how much.
We've given them a lot already. I haven't seen
True.
Yes, I haven't seen it produce anything.
It's really a velocity question and location question. I think what you'll find, and we're already seeing this, you're seeing some plans for blended, as I mentioned, Louisiana, where you're blending solar and gas turbines. And what you'll find is you can reduce the number of gas turbines you have and the amount of gas you're consuming by using enough of them, plus wind and solar. And that's going to keep happening because the absolute quantity demand is so great that I think the industry is going to chase everything they possibly can. It's not that they're totally price insensitive, but they're, and this is my opinion, they don't, but they're close to price insensitive in a sense. The product is so important and the velocity is so important that they'll pay a premium, including, I suspect, that the utilities have much more negotiating power than they realize. And some of the utilities, I think, are recognize that they can negotiate construction arrangements and business arrangements that don't impact consumers, increase rates.
Right, and I would think that we see such a blended form of energy right now because there were so many subsidies. And without the subsidies, it may not be as much of a blend. And we're all fine with all of the above energy, but when we're shutting down coal plants in rural communities like in Colorado and putting that energy aside and then saying we're going to replace it with 6,000 square acres of solar panels, but we don't have the transmission lines and we don't have the funding for that yet. And when this is so crucial with AI's rise, I think it's imperative that we have that reliable source and stop demonizing fossil fuels. We have some coal plants that are being converted into LNG facilities, and then I would love to see SMRs come to the surface too, have these small modular reactors in places. And do you believe that the energy policies that we've seen have actually kind of slowed down the progress potentially in AI's development?
Yeah, to a significant extent, yes, because when you do asymmetric subsidies, the solar and wind industry are no longer nascent small industries that need a boost with subsidies. They're massive industries globally, huge supply chains. They no longer need massive subsidies. So it has distorted how the market would respond. And you probably know that both in Georgia and Illinois, there have been delays or cancellations of coal plant shutdowns precisely because of the need for adequate and dispatchable power. I hope that that spreads to other states and we slow down as well. And in fact, I'll make a prediction. It will make some of my green friends' heads explode, to use that expression, but I do think you're going to see a coal plant built to fund data centers. That's happening in Asia.
Yes.
And in Vietnam and in...
China's building some 200 coal-fired energy plants
Exactly.
and selling us solar panels, yes. But to your point, we have coal plants in Colorado that are reduced down from 3 stacks to 1. And if in 5 seconds, could you just explain simply how much energy we need to supply this? What does that look like to the average person? And I'll yield.
A single refrigerator-sized computer rack in a data center, and there are thousands of racks, a single one uses more electricity than 50 Teslas or any other electric car. So it gives you a sense when you build millions of those, you're adding the equivalent of hundreds million new EVs to the road in a couple of years.
Yes, and just for the record, EVs don't have gas pedals, they have coal pedals. Thank you.
To H.R. 845. I recognize the gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Hoyle, for the purpose of offering an amendment designated Hoyle number 2. Without objection, the amendment is considered read.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill would reinstate a bad and unscientific rule that was thrown out because of ESA and Administrative Procedures Act violations. HR 845 would also block judicial review of that rule. The courts are an important part of how the ESA operates. They are a tool that businesses, stakeholders, and tribes can use to help ensure that Fish and Wildlife Service does its job protecting vulnerable species. Without the courts, there's little accountability for the quality of scientific monitoring programs or the conservation and management measures led by the states. All my amendment would do is to make sure that judicial review is allowed if the wolf population starts to rapidly decline. A rapid decline in wolves would provide evidence that the delisting decision was premature or failed to fully account for the remaining threats. If the best available scientific and commercial data show a rapid decline of more than 10% of the gray wolf population in a given year, the American people should be able to hold the Fish and Wildlife Service accountable to correct that through judicial review. This amendment isn't saying the service must relist the wolves. It doesn't require the courts to overturn the delisting rule. It just provides the option of seeking judicial review if the population starts to decline rapidly. If the proponents of wolf delisting are correct and wolves are set up for success in the long term, then the provision would never kick in. This is a common sense safety measure, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on my amendment, and I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Mr. Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do support my colleague's amendment, and I think it's pretty sensible to have some potential recourse if the wolf population that our country has invested so much in starts to slide back toward extinction. If the population starts to plummet, then at least allow the rule to be challenged in court. I mean, it seems like my colleagues on the other side of the aisle aren't comfortable with allowing judicial review if the population slips by at least 10%. If there's a percent decline that would be acceptable to them, I would love to identify that. Chair Westerman, would you accept allowing judicial review if the population drops below 20% in a year, perhaps? Would that be just, if the gentleman would let us know? I mean, we're looking for something here, some common ground to provide a backstop if this becomes law. Would you agree to that?
Well, I don't think it's my, it's not my legislation. And
Would the
it's not my,
gentlelady agree to that? Just a little bit of a safety net here in case she's wrong about. It is my time, but I'm asking you yes or no. Would you accept a backstop of 20% decline in any year?
Well, didn't we just bring a wolf back that was here 10,000 years ago? So, I mean, if it really gets that bad, we could just bring woolly mammoths back and all this stuff.
Oh, boy.
So.
Okay, well, that's a deeply unserious response to what should be a very serious
Look, we have worked on this time and time again, and rogue judges overturn the administration after administration's
understand, and reclaiming my time, because I did hear the gentlelady make that point. I don't see why there wouldn't be some level of a safety net that my friends across the aisle would agree to. That's all this amendment is trying to get at, and we can't even get a straight answer about whether 10, 20, 30% decline in any single year could at least trigger some kind of judicial review. So, look, I think the gentlelady from Oregon is on the right track with this amendment. It's common sense to have a safety net if you're going to legislatively try to delist and declare a species recovered. And so let those who value science-based management, who value continuing to hang on to this recovered wolf population that we've spent so much time and money in, it's been such a success story. If you believe any of that, you should support this amendment. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stauber, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I rise in opposition to my good friend's amendment simply because it does not follow the science. The science already tells us that the gray wolf has recovered, and the current population across the lower 48 far exceeds the recovery goals that were set when the species was listed under the ESA. In fact, the population today is far higher than 10% of the recovery goal. Thus, even if the population were to decline 10%, in a calendar year, the population would still be far above that original recovery goal. This 10% threshold set forth in this amendment is arbitrary and does not follow the science. It's simply an attempt, in my opinion, to keep the gray wolf listed under the ESA. We must delist and allow the states to manage I trust the states to manage the population. Under this ESA, since 1978, the gray wolf has been on the threatened list. It's like the Hotel California sign you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. I urge my colleagues to join me in opposing this amendment simply because it does not follow the science. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Mr. Tiffany, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we have before us is, it says, has declined more than 10%. That's what we're answering the question on. And I would take you back to the testimony that we received, expert testimony, both previous session and this session, from Dr. Roberts, where he said there can be up to a 29% take. That is something that is peer-reviewed science of a species. You can have up to 29% take, and you will not threaten that species' numbers. If it does, then you make a change from there. The second point is that states can and will manage these species. Our colleague from Wyoming stated it very clearly and aptly. The states are going to manage these populations, and they're not going to allow them to become endangered. If for some reason a population would crash, then they will act, because the states care as much as the federal government. And in fact, the caring of the federal government is what has led us to this point where we've had a slaughter in places like northern Wisconsin. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Boebert, you're recognized.
Thank you. I also oppose this amendment that aims to undermine the bill entirely. This amendment is unnecessary and is not backed by science. And let's just start with the facts here. When the gray wolf was first listed under the Endangered Species Act in 1967, its population had dwindled to fewer than 1,000 across the lower 48 states. The protections afforded by the act were necessary then, and they worked. Today, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services estimates the gray wolf population at over 6,000 in the lower 48 and growing across regions like the Northern Rockies, Great Lakes, and beyond. The left wants to paint a picture of wolves vanishing from our forests, but this fear ignores evidence. States with delisted populations like those in the Northern Rockies since 2011 have not seen a collapse. States are not the enemy of conservation. They are its partners. They know their ecosystems better than the federal government does. They know their people. They know their wolves better than any distant bureaucracy. And delisting the gray wolf would empower states to implement flexible, localized management that would balance wolf populations with the needs of our rural communities. Delisting does not mean abandoning the wolf. It means trusting in its resilience and shifting management to the states, entities that have proven they can steward this species and many others effectively. As I said in my opening statement, state and tribal wildlife agencies have a proven record of successfully managing gray wolves. Just like in Montana's successful state management, resulting in gray wolves being 500% above the Fish and Wildlife Service recovery goals. Idaho's successful state management resulted in gray wolves being over 700% above the recovery goals. So once again, I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I yield.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? I recognize myself to briefly say I oppose the amendment.
Colorado, Ms. Boebert is recognized for her 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I would echo Ms. Hageman's statements. We have been unable to properly manage our forests for decades now, and it has really prevented us from being proactive when it comes to wildfires. I live in Colorado. We are part of the beetle kill epidemic that is taking place. We have 6 billion standing dead trees in the West, all creating a massive tinderbox. When we have a catastrophic wildfire, it will emit more carbon emissions, according to NASA, in a single day than an entire state having all of their vehicles running 24/7. And this is a real problem, and we have to be proactive in managing our forests. And that really stems to everything. It is the core of everything. When we have unhealthy forests and we have unhealthy watersheds, about 80% of Colorado's municipal water comes from our forests. And to protect that, we must protect our forests. In Colorado, we have really been prey to wilderness areas, these designations that prevent us from managing the roadless rule that contributes to things like the Route Forest Fire and many others. I've been in the air seeing these fires, and you can have all the money in the world, but if you aren't going to actually manage, or if you're prohibited from managing the forest, then we are going to continue to have these catastrophic wildfires. Chief Muncy, with all of the policy that is out there that prevents forest management, which policies would you like to see maybe deregulated in order to properly get to a goal of minimizing catastrophic wildfires before they happen?
I'd like to see the Fix Our Forests Act passed and become national policy, because I think that the CE is allowing us to treat greater areas of critical importance. I'm going to divert just a little bit from your question to go back to the previous comments on the millions of dollars that could be taken away from local government. We recently did a study about where's the money going, because the local, to be honest, I demonstrated in our picture how we solved the bark beetle problem. 1 million trees, 1.1 million trees we were able to pull away. That money doesn't come to us. It's going to other groups that have no accountability. We're not focusing on the outcomes of where the dollars are going. We're focusing simply on what people are saying in the outputs. That money needs to be brought back into the local communities to do actual work. There needs to be technology and dashboards that prove to our citizens that what we're doing is focusing on outcomes so that we can get this work done. So everything you say, I agree with. The process of what we need to do is to have better leadership that's more than just focusing, and I love President Trump's proposal to bring the wildfire agencies together. That's a bold move because there is overlap in what we're doing, but the biggest thing is that we don't have a key decision-making. And when we talk about the national forest, on one end, I have the Angeles National Forest in our jurisdiction. The second end, I have San Bernardino National Forest. There's two different forest supervisors, and the same federal policies are interpreted so differently. Leadership is critical. And I think that we need to use technology and artificial intelligence, not only for the permitting process, but to fairly apply the federal policies to allow us to do our job so that we can get into our forests, get into our communities to do meaningful work so that our homeowners can have insurance for their houses, so they can have this expectation that a fire that's originating in the natural resources isn't going to burn into our communities. Thank you.
Yes, and I know President Trump has been focused on cleaning up the forestry, the forest floors, and getting those fuels off the ground. And would you agree that those in the timber industry, when they are allowed to go in and harvest timber from our forests, they create roads to get in there? Does that benefit your fire mitigation efforts?
I served on federal incident management teams for well over a decade, and so I've fought fires in forests that allowed the timber industry, and I will tell you unequivocally that the infrastructure that's in place allows us to access these fires. More importantly, a lot of the areas that have had timber harvesting are great places to stop the fire. It's a good place to introduce good fire. It's been extremely helpful having that infrastructure in place. I'm not a forester like Mr. Westerman, but I also understand. But I also understand that, and I watched a recent CNN interview that he did, that he's an outstanding football player and he can weigh in on Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and the Chiefs. Nice job, sir.
Thank you, Chief. My time has expired. I yield.
I think the gentleman for the full committee, Mr. Weston.
095 is offered by Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the substitute will be considered as original text for the purpose of further amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of the bill, who's worked very diligently on this, Representative Boebert from Colorado, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This bill means a lot to me and at least 65 other communities that are listed on my bill that we recognize. And this started in a little town in Westcliff, Colorado. I represented Westcliff, Colorado in the county of Custer in my first term. And one of the very first issues that I learned about there was their unique zip code denial. And it is something that I have promised that city, that community, that I would continue working on until I saw a resolve. Now, while I continued working for the town of Westcliff in Custer County, Colorado, I learned that this is an issue that we see all over the nation. And sorry, Westcliff is the neighboring city, so it's Silver Cliff that got me started on this. But throughout the nation, we have these communities who are stripped of their identity and so much more that I'll go through in a moment. But this is a really large issue, and when cities petition the United States Postal Service, they are often just blanketly denied, and it takes 10 years for them to begin the appeals process. So I do want to rise today in support of my bill, H.R. 3095, to direct the United States Postal Service to designate single unique zip codes for certain communities and for other purposes. This common sense bipartisan bill directs the United States Postal Service to assign single unique zip codes to specific communities across the nation, including 15 from my home state of Colorado. Too many towns and cities have gone far too long without a zip code of their own. This may sound like a minor inconvenience to some, but for the people living in these communities, it creates a very real and very frustrating problem. The zip code system was introduced in the 1960s and has evolved far beyond its original purpose. While the Postal Service utilizes it for mail delivery, zip codes are also relied on by economic developers, insurers, and emergency personnel. When a community doesn't have its own zip code, it leads to serious logistical and financial challenges. For example, emergency responders can be dispatched to a wrong location. Businesses suffer from lost deliveries, residents are overcharged for insurance, and local governments miss out on critical sales tax revenues that instead get sent to neighboring jurisdictions. These are everyday frustrations that impact real people and hinder the ability of towns to serve their citizens effectively. This bill empowers communities to better meet the needs of their residents, strengthens local identity, and improves the operation of local government. A unique zip code can support infrastructure planning, reduce mail inconsistencies, and enhance overall efficiencies. The current process for applying for a new zip code is broken. Petitions to the Postal Service are rarely approved, and if denied, they cannot appeal this decision for up to 10 years. And that is strictly unacceptable. And I hope this legislation creates a new precedence within the United States Postal Service to change that time frame. My bill offers a direct, practical solution. With H.R. 3095, we aim to help over 65 communities across our entire country finally resolve these longstanding problems. And this bill is supported by Republicans and Democrats, mayors and town boards. These communities asked for help, and we are answering that call. To me, it is unfortunate that it takes an act of Congress to fix something like this within the United States Postal Service, but we are here to resolve this issue. I have heard of cities in Colorado alone that are losing approximately $5 million in sales tax revenue annually. And this will be something that helps bring economic development and security. Again, this is a bipartisan bill with 65 communities that are included, and I'm excited to see this pass committee today. I urge adoption of this bill, and join me in passing H.R. 3095 so that these communities get the recognition and services that they rightly deserve. And again, a shout out to Silver Cliff, Colorado, who got me started on this wonderful mission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
The gentlelady yields. Before I recognize Ranking Member Lynch, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record several letters from communities in support of Representative Boebert's H.R. 3095.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support today of H.R. 4, President Trump's big, beautiful rescissions package. This bill slashes radical foreign aid at the State Department, USAID, and the U.S. Institute of Peace for woke gender ideology and equity nonsense that mocks American values. Why are we bankrolling wokeism abroad when ranchers and small business owners in my district are struggling? H.R. 4 defunds PBS and NPR's biased media circus. For years, taxpayers have been forced to subsidize a public media system that's less about informing and more about indoctrinating. To my friends across the aisle, I know you love your globalist pet projects, but the American people are fed up. The voters that sent us here are watching, and they're done seeing their dollars shipped overseas and funneled into biased media. H.R. 4 is a victory for taxpayers, and I urge its adoption. I yield.
From Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Los Angeles riots are certainly a shameful explosion of lawlessness that we are once again seeing. The narrative has changed in these riots, but it's certainly the same type of actors. We're seeing businesses torched, cars torched, families uprooted, certainly communities that are scared. And this is by no means a peaceful protests. It is absolute chaos, and rioters don't get a free pass to burn down cities just simply because they're mad, because they are mad that our nation's laws are being upheld, that our federal agents are upholding their oath and doing what they were hired to do. Our first responders deserve respect. They do not deserve to have rocks thrown at them and to be injured. But, I mean, let's be honest, this violence didn't really spark in a vacuum. Sanctuary policies are a magnet for trouble. They shield criminals, undermine the rule of law. And, governors, I've sat here and I've heard you today. You say that safety is your #1 priority. You want your communities safe. You want your people safe. And, Governor Hochul, you just asked, how can we work together to ensure that that happens? Well, that's exactly what we want to do in this hearing. We want to work together. We want to talk to you about your sanctuary policies that are actually preventing us from working with you to keep your community safe, because we want them safe as well. I have the same policies in Colorado that restrict our local law enforcement officers from coordinating with federal agents. And some of my counties have issued lawsuits to try to end that. But this is serious, and we owe it to every American to restore safety and enforce our laws. It's been stated that this is a federal law and it's not your job to uphold the federal law. Well, we're not asking you to uphold it. We're just asking you to kind of step out of the way and allow the federal government to do the job, to uphold these laws. When you have someone, don't wait until they commit a violent, heinous crime before we know their immigration status. So now we're seeing these riots everywhere. We've heard in 2020 that everything was mostly peaceful as cities burned down, as people lost their lives, as law enforcement officers lost their lives. So I just want to ask you three governors, yes or no, is the destruction of private and governmental property, is that something that fits under your definition of a peaceful protest? Governor Walz, yes or no?
No, it does not.
Thank you. Governor Pritzker?
I find it hard to believe that you're lecturing us
Yes or
about
no?
peaceful protest. Look at what
Yes or
happened
no?
January 6th here at the Capitol.
No, what we're
The
seeing in
attack
LA
on
is
our
an
democracy.
insurrection. You want to talk about
That
an
is an
insurrection? This is an
insurrection.
absolute insurrection.
You don't
They are-
understand what insurrection
I
is
asked
when
you a
people
yes
are
or
trying
no
to overturn
question,
an
sir.
election
And
here
I'm showing,
at the Congress.
I started this off
You
showing
were
you
here. They were
decorum, and I would
attacking you, by
respect
the way.
same. I would expect the same.
I'm answering your question. It is outrageous
it-
that you are asking
is
us
it
these
peaceful
questions
to
when you're the one condoning
to destroy
pardoning of people who attack
private and
police
government property
right here at our Capitol?
Governor Hochul, it's been a long day. Does that fit under your definition of a peaceful protest? The destruction of private and government property?
No, and we feel for the business owners and the community for what's going on there.
So
but
do we.
This is a narrow
yes or no,
scope of
would,
people, and the
would
vast
lighting
majority are
police
peaceful.
cars on fire fit under the definition of a peaceful protest?
No, we reject that. No one should be lighting police
Governor
cars
Pritzker,
on
yes or
fire.
I'm
no?
opposed to violence in any form. Yes.
Governor Walz?
Yeah, we reject that.
Okay. Throwing bricks or large rocks at police officers? Is that peaceful?
It is not.
Is that peaceful, Governor?
Whether it's in Los Angeles or here in Washington at the Capitol, no.
Yeah, that didn't happen here. Governor Hochul?
Rejected.
It actually did, but no, it's not acceptable.
Okay. Governor Pritzker, you have you or have you not called for mass protests and mobilization and disruption?
Indeed, microphones, megaphones,
This
going
was,
to the ballot box.
Well, they're responding in a much different way, are they not? President Trump also asked for people
protest
to
is the history of this
peacefully
country.
make their voices heard. So it's okay for you to say that and hold that standard, but President Trump has a different standard when he actually makes the claim.
Inciting
peaceful,
riots at
and
the
you
Capitol?
said
Yes,
you want
there
mass
is a difference
protests,
between the two.
mobilizations, and disruption as a response to President Trump's policies. I just think that this is all hypocritical. You've called in your National Guard. You don't want President Trump to come in and enforce the rule of law to keep communities safe, and your destructive policies are harming American citizens. We should not have to wait until violence is committed to find out their legal status. We have 2 million unknown gotaways because of Joe Biden's administration, and we have got to find them and get them out of America. And I thank President Trump and his administration for doing just that. I yield.
Gentlelady yields. Chair recognizes Mr. Craig from Minnesota.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for allowing me to wave on to this committee today. I think if I were permanent.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady
Thank you,
from
Mr.
Colorado, Ms. Boebert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor to have you here, and congratulations. I want to talk to you about a few things in Colorado specifically. So in my district, our ranchers and farmers, they're really struggling with the economic losses from gray wolf depredation, which is why my friend Tom Tiffany and I, we introduced legislation, HR 845, the Pet and Livestock Protection Act, to delist the gray wolf from the Endangered Species Act. The wolf population has recovered in many, many areas, and federal protections are no longer needed. This is something that, as you know, it's been back and forth on and off of the Endangered Species Act. So I would like to know, Mr. Secretary, what is the Department of Interior's position on delisting the gray wolf, and what actions are you taking or potentially taking to support rural communities impacted by these predators?
As I've stated earlier, I'll state again today, gray wolf, grizzly wolves in northern Minnesota, all these are under review. It's we'll follow the science and follow the law, but it's my understanding that we've far exceeded the recovery numbers on all of these species. And as I said earlier, we turned the Endangered Species Act into the Hotel California. You could check in but never get out, and we need to be celebrating when species come off. If the gray wolf comes off, it should be a celebration that we've done a great job on recovery.
Yes, Mr. Secretary, I agree with that, and that's actually an argument I've made in this committee time and time again, that this is a great success story of the Endangered Species Act. We have listed the gray wolf, and it seems that it has recovered, and we should trust the science. In fact, last Congress, that's what my bill was titled, Trust the Science, but we're seeing that these left-leaning states, Democrat-run states, are bringing these predators in more and more. So I want to see, will you work with Congress and to advance this piece of legislation so we can get that codified into law, and we don't have to deal with the frivolous lawsuits and prevent that in the future?
We'll be happy to sit down with you and discuss that piece of legislation. I haven't read it, so I won't specifically commit to that, but I would certainly commit with working you on this issue because we have to be celebrating species coming off that list.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. So I've also introduced H.R. 131, the Finish the AVC Act, to complete the Arkansas Valley Conduit. This is a vital water project in southeast Colorado. It's been delayed since the Kennedy administration. This vital project, it would provide clean drinking water to 50,000 Coloradans. So I would like to, if you haven't read the bill yet, first ask you to look at that legislation. And if so, I would like to have conversations about your commitment to supporting H.R. 131 and working with me and others to secure the funding and regulatory approvals needed to get this project across the finish line.
Yep, it'll be I'm less familiar with that particular bill, but would very much look for learning more about that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And then we have H.R. 1, the OBBB, the One Big Beautiful Bill. It includes critical energy permitting reforms to boost domestic production and reduce bureaucratic delays. I'm particularly focused on a provision that includes My American Energy Act, which requires the department to process applications for permits to drill, APDs, under valid leases regardless of unrelated civil actions, and extend APD terms to 4 years to provide certainty for energy procedures. So now, does the department support provisions like this, extending the term to a 4-year term and other provisions to ensure that the APDs are processed without interference from frivolous lawsuits to provide for this longer period?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And what actions is the department taking to streamline energy permitting to support leaseholders in developing our nation's energy resources?
On the speeding up permitting is a core priority of the department. A number of efforts that are going on. We've had some success. We did a pilot project on a environmental assessment and an EIS where we set targets of could we get an EA done in less than 14 days. Normally takes over a year. An EIS in less than 28 days normally takes over 2 years. We completed the first one in May. People said, how do you do that? Well, we put more time on the project in 2 weeks with a continuous SWAT team working it from beginning to end than when it took a year, when it just went from one desk to another with 30 days in between and people having to pick it up and where was it, what were they thinking and what were they trying to get. So we can deliver better products faster, those things, and part of that is then also building the IT systems to support that. So there's a lot of interesting things that we're doing where we can increase quality and dramatically shorten timeframes. And then, of course, then you don't need to just throw more bodies at it. We can create more meaningful, purposeful jobs for people that are working on the permitting side of things than when they're just shuffling paper.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And in my last question here for you, in April of last year, the BLM finalized its rule permitting for fluid mineral leases and leasing processes. This rule was constructed by the Biden administration to slowly constrict oil and gas leases on federal lands. So kind of under that permitting and lease structure here in that same vein. Under your leadership, how does the department plan to address really this dangerous rulemaking that threatens U.S. energy independence?
I'm going to have to interrupt.
Okay.
Oh, we're way over. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I thought I was under.
Maybe
when I saw 42, I thought I had 42 to go, not over.
The secretary
Apologize.
can get that answer back to you, hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr.
Chair
Secretary.
now recognizes the
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schweikert. Thank you so much for reserving this time in the People's House to honor our friend, Charlie. Today's a really hard day. This is unexpected, obviously, but the moment we heard that something had happened, I was able to get on the phone with faith leaders throughout the nation, and instantaneously, there were prayer groups formed, mighty men and women of God, faith-filled Christians, believers, who stood in the gap and interceded for my friend, Charlie. I thank God for that faith. The prayers were not in vain. God promises that his word will produce what it says it will. I do not believe that Charlie's life being stolen in this manner is in vain. Charlie is a pioneer, a Greek word that God has brought to my remembrance each and every day for more than a decade. And the Greek word is archegos. And if you look it up in the Strong's Concordance, it's word number 747. And in some way, God reminds me of this Greek word, archegos, on a daily basis. And even when I think I understand it, I still ask him to give me deeper revelation. And I believe that today God highlighted exactly what it means. He personified this word, and it is pioneer in the English language. And it is one who pioneers a way, who makes a way for others to follow. Maybe not the originator of the thing, but someone who fearlessly takes charge, who courageously goes into the unknown, who faces adversaries unafraid, unashamed, boldly, and influences others to continue down that path. And that's exactly what Charlie Kirk has done. Charlie Kirk is a husband, a father, a man who spoke more of politics, or more of family than he ever did politics. For those who don't know him personally, you may just see him as a political figure. But to those of us who know Charlie, who listen to his message on a regular basis, who attend his events, we know that rather than talking about tax rates and GDP, he's more talking about the nuclear family, talking about faith in God, talking about the value of marriage, how children need a father in the home, how they need both parents, how you uplift one another rather than tear each other down. And that's exactly what Charlie did. He would go into sometimes the enemy's territory, and he would give those who saw themselves as his enemy a platform to speak. And he would have debate. He never promoted violence. He condemned violence at every turn. He gave data, thoughtful responses, and he shared his faith each and every day. A pioneer who shared his love for Jesus, proclaiming the lordship and reign of Jesus each and every day. Faith comes by hearing, and by hearing the word of God. And more literally, that second word, hearing, in Scripture means understanding. Faith comes by hearing and understanding the Word of God. And I believe that Charlie Kirk was on a mission for America and the world to hear and understand the love of God, to have a revelation of the love of God, so that they would know the hope of their calling, so that their inner being would be enlightened, and they would understand that there was a hope and a future, a desired outcome that God had purposed them with. Charlie Kirk understood that you have to be a doer of the word, that faith without corresponding action isn't faith at all. Charlie took action each and every day. We heard that he was moving our youth to the right, but I think more importantly, Charlie Kirk was moving our youth to God, to faith in God, to read the Scriptures. He lived exactly what he spoke each and every day, being the example, being the change that he wanted to see in America and beyond. Charlie Kirk has a legacy, not only through the work that he's done, but through his wife, Erica, who I humbly ask each and every person pray for her and their children. Those prayers right now mean so much. Charlie Kirk is present with the Lord. He is in the fullness of joy right now, present with Jesus. He's not hurting. He is not suffering. We are the ones who are feeling lost. Erica and those children are the ones who are feeling lost and hurt and pain, but it is the Holy Spirit who I ask to surround them with his wraparound presence and bring them peace, peace that surpasses all understanding in this time, to guard their hearts, to heal their brokenhearted. We know that joy will come. There is a time of mourning, but that joy is not just a suggestion. It is the battle plan that will get them through each and every day of their life. But in this moment, I want to quote one thing that my friend Charlie said. He's given so many of us an opportunity to speak truth. He's given us his platform, an ability to reach into the hearts and lives of millions of our youth and beyond. And a recent quote he said, "You have been commanded to go do something productive with your life, to go give and to produce and to risk and to then sow into other people." That is a biblical idea that has made the world profoundly better. Charlie Kirk was a doer of the word, a risk taker, a bold defender of truth, and he has sown into the lives of millions, and that harvest will produce 30, 60, and 100-fold. Charlie, you have a legacy. Thank you for honoring our Father God. Thank you for proclaiming the Lordship of Jesus Christ. Thank you for expressing the fellowship and communion of the Holy Spirit. We will not be silenced. That would be a dishonor to everything Charlie has done over the years. We will be bold. We will speak out. We will go forward. We will continue to move our youth closer to God. We will continue to press in and get a grip on God as he has a grip on us. And this today, September 10th, 2025, truly marks a turning point in our nation and throughout the world. Charlie Kirk, God bless you. God bless Turning Point USA. Andrew, Tyler, Erica, everyone who is a part of the team, God bless you all, and thank you so much. It's been such an honor to serve alongside of you. Mr. Schweikert, I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, look, I have a...
It's all good.
It's all George Knapp's fault.
I now recognize Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Wiggins, based on your training and operational experience, could the behavior that you witnessed, a transmedium object vanishing without a sound, be explained by any known technology that we possess or other governments possess?
It cannot. No.
And has any government agency debriefed you or any of your shipmates regarding the EOIR and radar confirmed UAP encounter aboard USS Jackson?
No one has, no, ma'am.
What was that encounter like when you brought that up? If you want to briefly summarize that, when you brought that to their attention and then you were not provided any follow-up, who was told and how did you feel when there was no contact back to you?
As far as the actual incident happening
Yes,
or
sir.
the reporting level?
Yes, Chief.
It was within the event happening. My duties are to report to the tactical action officer on watch while we're standing watch. So tactical action officer was there. I made my report. I've not had any discussion outside of that day. There's been no communication to me or requests from me within inside of the military. But speaking of that actual incident itself, once the report was made to the tactical action officer, that's when I made the decision to ask the individual watchstander that was controlling Sapphire to be able to slew into the location. And that's what you see in the video itself, is when the watchstander is slewing in and kind of showing us what we're looking at. But outside of that, that's as far as the reporting went that I know of.
Thank you, Chief. Just for the sake of time, Mr. Nusatelli, has RO, the Air Force, or the FBI ever followed up with you personally about the Red Square event?
I did have follow-up by Aero, nothing with the Air Force. The Aero office updated me, I think, at least 2 times. They let me know that they were unable to locate any records, that the records had been destroyed by the Air Force. The Air Force is destroying all their police records every 3 years on a schedule. So
You were informed that these documents were destroyed.
Well, I have a Freedom of Information Act from the Air Force that states clearly that they destroy all police records on a 3-year schedule.
Okay. So they were sitting on documentation, destroyed it, refused to question any of the lead investigators, anything leading into this investigation?
Yeah, basically, they destroyed all the police records. So you couldn't even, call the Air Force and ask them if there was a vehicle accident in that time frame. So that's a big problem. We're losing data in real time. So we'll never be able to go back and track.
I think our federal government has a history of destroying records. Thank you very much, Mr. Nusatelli. Dr. Borland, as a geospatial intelligence officer, have you seen classified data indicating UAPs operate in restricted U.S. airspace, and has that information been withheld from Congress?
I have not in U.S. airspace. That is intelligence oversight, so I did not have domestic authorities.
After filing your Inspector General complaint over retaliation inside the Pentagon's UAP office, did you receive any kind of protection or just more retaliation?
Within the IG or Aero, ma'am?
Either.
Aero, they went after the staff member and classified everything, shut that down. The IG, to this day, I don't even know if my complaint's active. I know my attorney that represented me was very, very, very concerned. And the best of my understanding, I was determined credible, not urgent.
And do you think that experience would suggest that the internal UAP investigations may be compromised?
Possibly. I mean, it's so hard because this goes back to people doing the job they're told to do, and very few people are going to want to give up their careers, 20, 30-year pension, get rid of their kids' health care, get rid of their house. It's possible, yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Borland. Mr. Spielberger, do national security whistleblowers currently have any external appeals processes to challenge retaliation, or are they just stuck relying on the same agencies that they're accusing?
Congresswoman, this is one of the biggest concerns that we at POGO have, basically around the independence of investigations and accountability for retaliation. Basically, yes, national security whistleblowers have to rely on internal administrative processes that go through agency inspector generals. There are some differentiations, but the bottom line is that they are forced to rely on protection from the same agencies and people who they are alleging retaliated against them.
Yes, well, I thank you all for your bravery. We are out of time here. Thank you so much for coming forward, and we will do everything that we can to ensure that you are all protected. Thank you for trying to bring truth and transparency to the American people. Madam Chair, I yield.
I now recognize Mr. Burleson for about 5 minutes.
Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's interesting, all the funds that are needed for all these crime rehabilitation. I thought they were saying D.C. was such a safe and wonderful place, but really, I mean, Washington, D.C.'s crime rates remain significantly higher than the national average, particularly for violent and property crimes, despite recent declines, thanks to President Trump and this administration for taking action. Based on the most recent data from 2024, the latest full year figures available for 2025, the breakdown is key crime rates in D.C. versus the national average per 100,000 people in 2024. Violent crime in D.C. recorded 1,006 violent crimes per 100,000 residents compared to the U.S. average of 369. This makes D.C. violent crime rates 180% higher than the national average. There is a crime problem in Washington, D.C., and I may have time to go back to more of this. Just like the property crime rates had 3,693 property crimes per 100,000 versus the national average of 1,758. That's 109.8% higher property crimes here in Washington, D.C. I have a Ring doorbell cam at my residence where I live when I am in Washington, D.C., where I am here more than I am home. And unlike Democrats, I have one registered residence, and that's in Colorado. I don't go all over the country saying this is my prime residence. I lease here. But on that Ring door cam, I'm set up for a 5-mile radius of my home to get notifications of what's going on around me. And all day, every day, gunshots, cars stolen, porch pirates. Folks are getting their homes broken into on a regular basis, a daily basis. I get notifications on a Ring door cam, just neighbors talking to one another. What is going on? 5, 6, 8 gunshots just went off. Does anybody know anything? High-speed car chase. Oh no, another package stolen. My car was broken into. My car was stolen. My house was broken into. All day, every day in Washington, D.C. Do you know I have the same program in my home, for my home in a radius in Colorado, and I get, my cat's missing, my dog's missing. Hey, I have a bike for sale. Does anybody want it? Do you want to purchase it? We don't hear gunshots going off every single day. There is a crime problem here. And as far as having an issue, taking issue with the National Guard having a temporary presence to get your city, this city, our nation's beautiful capital, under control and safe. I didn't hear any problems from Washington, D.C. residents or my colleagues on the other side of the aisle when 20,000 National Guards came in and surrounded the Capitol building and prohibited your First Amendment rights to petition your government with your grievances. I didn't see an uprising there. We weren't happy about the fences and the hundreds of miles of barbed wire surrounding our nation's capital, and armed National Guard, tens of thousands of them, keeping you out of the people's house. But now they're here to help and keep you safe, and that's somehow an issue. I'm glad that we are having this hearing today. I'm glad that we are having this markup. I'm glad that we are having this debate. You know, whistleblowers have even told this very committee that they have faced pressure from Metropolitan Police Department leadership to manipulate crime statistics in Washington, D.C. Well, y'all live here. We're here a lot during the year. We see it. We don't need the data. We know it's manipulated because we see everything. You can't even go into a CVS store and get a bottle of shampoo because it's locked up. We want this to be a beautiful place for people to visit. The history here in this city is incredible. Our nation's capital should be celebrated. People should want to come here and certainly feel safe. And thanks to President Trump and the legislation that we are marking up today, it can be. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished lady from Colorado, Ms. Boebert.
The lady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to Chairman Comer and to the free state of Florida's next governor, Byron Donalds, I rise in support of H.R. 4922, the D.C. Crimes Act, which is sponsored by Congressman Donalds. This critical legislation is a direct response to the failed pro-crime policies that have turned our nation's capital into a war zone. Under failing leftist policies, Washington, D.C. has seen an epidemic of violence, carjackings surging 300%, homicide ravaging communities, and young thugs, some as old as 24, treated as juveniles, slapped with lenient sentences below mandatory minimums. It endangers young families and small businesses struggling in this crime-ridden city. Innocent residents live in fear while criminals roam free, mocking the rule of law. H.R. 4922 cuts through this madness. It ensures adults face adult consequences. It repeals judges' abilities to dodge mandatory minimums for youth crimes. And crucially, it blocks the D.C. Council from gutting sentencing laws, reclaiming Congress's congressional constitutional oversight over this federal district, as it should be. As President Trump declared in his March 2025 executive order, if D.C. won't act, we must, restoring order, beauty, and safety to our capital. This bill isn't about politics. It's about protecting lives. Republicans are delivering real reform, tougher accountability, transparent juvenile crime data via public website, and a safer D.C. for all. I urge my colleagues to join us and pass H.R. 4922 now to make America and this district safe again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us here today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the life and legacy of my good friend Charlie Kirk. He was absolutely unafraid to say what millions of young Americans were starting to realize, that college for many has become a costly scam that leaves students in debt and unprepared for the real world that they are entering into. His advocacy helped spark a national conversation about educational freedom and the need for alternatives. Today's hearing continues that work by examining how school choice and career-focused pathways like apprenticeships can give students a real opportunity without the baggage of broken institutions and what they bring. Ms. Gressler, do you agree with Charlie Kirk's statement that college has become a multi-trillion-dollar scam for many of the students who are left with debt and indoctrination and no job after completing those courses?
Yes, for many of them it has, and that's because we have a situation where the government is not creating a level playing field, but instead putting hundreds of billions of dollars a year into subsidies that the Federal Reserve has said have done more to increase tuition than to have any positive outcomes. And at the same time as doing that, they're hampering apprenticeship programs. When Congress created the National Apprenticeship Program, it was 2 pages of legislation. There are hundreds of pages of regulations that are imposed on anybody that wants to start an apprenticeship program, and the Biden administration proposed hundreds more pages of regulations. They fortunately didn't finalize that, but we don't need a situation like this. We need to remove the barriers and put the equal playing field.
Hundreds and hundreds of regulations for a 2-page bill for apprenticeships. That's interesting. It seems like something that we need to address right away. President Trump certainly has a record of deregulation. So are you concerned that nearly half of recent graduates are underemployed, often working jobs that never required a college degree in the first place?
Absolutely, because the investment is not paying off for them. Not only are taxpayer dollars being wasted, but also those individuals are taking out tens of thousands of dollars in debt and not being able to repay it because we're lacking the market incentives to let them know what is actually a positive return on your investment. And so if we could get rid of the barriers that are out there, get rid of the subsidies, then more programs would be forced to not only provide an education that has positive returns, but also you wouldn't need the federal loans. Those programs themselves could have income-driven repayment plans, and so they would be willing to partner with students and say, you don't have to pay tuition up front, we're going to partner with you, and we get a percentage of your earnings for a certain number of years afterwards, and that can take the federal government out of it completely.
Interesting. And so then it sounds like you would agree that the federal government has made the student debt crisis worse by prioritizing college loans over support for apprenticeships and skilled trade.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mitchell, would you say that today's four-year colleges are more focused on pushing political agendas than preparing our students for real-world marketable skills?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think, unfortunately, what you see across the educational spectrum is that much of education, whether or not that's K-12 or even at the higher ed levels, it's not yielding the results for students that they need to be productive citizens, right? So the NAEP scores that were just released, the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores, show that our graduating seniors are performing academically at the lowest levels in history. Now, many of those are matriculating still into colleges, and we've got to ask the question, where did all of that money get used? Because the dollars have been, have increased over time. The academic results are decreasing over time. And as we've heard from other members of this panel today, kids are leaving with more debt than they are opportunity. And so we've got to ask some really hard questions, I think, about the entire education system and how we give families and kids more options.
Yes, and would you say that many of today's college graduates are more ideologically rigid than they are job ready after leaving?
Yeah, one of the things that is really interesting, some research comes out of the University of Arkansas, shows that students who participate in choice programs when they are in K through 12 are actually more civically engaged. Right? They have greater exposure to civil discourse, for instance, which we are in dire need of, especially on campus. And so I'm hopeful that as we increase choice among K-12 students, that those young adults will be more prepared to engage with the world, to engage even with others who have different views from themselves in a civil manner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. Dr. Hershey, should more rural students be encouraged to pursue apprenticeships or trade careers instead of taking on debt for these four-year degrees like they have been?
That's 100% our mission. We feel like it's one of the most critical needs for our rural kids to be able to get exposed to real-world experiences and have those internship opportunities so that they can get integrated right in. I mean, I had a kid come back who earned a welding certificate and he was making six figures in half a year. So there's definitely significant opportunity, which is why here in our district, we're really focusing on that internship work.
And do you believe that?
Ladies'
Oh,
time is expired.
I'm so sorry. I thought I had a minute left,
No,
Mr. Chairman. I apologize for that. Well, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Order. Ms. Boebert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This has certainly been lively today. Madam Mayor, I appreciate you being here today, and I have a few questions for you. Do you believe in regard to crime, D.C. City Council is moving the district in the right direction or wrong direction?
The City Council and I are working.
Right or wrong direction?
We're moving in the right direction.
Now, okay. Why in 2023 did you veto the council's updates to the criminal code to eliminate most mandatory minimum sentences, reduce mandatory maximum penalties, and allow jury trials for misdemeanors?
Well, I made clear at the time my objections to the rewrite of the criminal code. The criminal code does need to be
Your objection was this
updated.
bill does not make us safer, is that correct?
That's what I believe.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Bowser, as we know, City Council overruled your veto, and the criminal code changes went into effect 2023. This same year, crime rates rose dramatically. They overruled your veto, and then we saw crime rates rise dramatically. Do you believe that this bill contributed to the dramatic rise in crime that we saw in 2023 that's been mentioned here today as well by the council?
Well, the bill didn't go into effect, but I believe that it was necessary for us to look at our entire public safety ecosystem, not just that year, but previous years.
So you had some foresight that this could help, and you said this bill does not make us safer. The council overruled your veto, and at multiple events this year, you opposed National Guard deployments in Washington, D.C. However, since President Trump deployed the National Guard in D.C., violent crime has dropped nearly 50%.
Well, Ms. Boebert, may I?
One moment. I'll
Okay.
give you a chance to respond. Since President Trump deployed the National Guard in D.C., violent crime has dropped nearly 50%. Property crimes like burglary, vehicle theft dropped about 25%. And carjacking saw a dramatic 28% decline compared to the same period in 2024. Will you admit, Mayor Bowser, that President Trump bringing in the National Guard has helped clean up this district? And if not, why have you let them stay here indefinitely?
What I have said is that the increase in federal law enforcement, National Guard is not law enforcement.
You've allowed them to stay here indefinitely, though.
The president controls the DC National Guard, and he purports to control the guards from other states.
Have you asked him to remove them?
Yes.
And you would be in favor of that? Do you think that crime would increase once again?
Ms. Boebert, I put in place a mayor's order that is a framework for how DC government will work with our federal partners.
Yes, ma'am.
And they include the FBI, the DEA, the ATF,
Yes, ma'am.
U.S.
Sorry, my time
Capitol
is short.
Police,
I don't mean to step over you.
as well as the United States
I
Secret
do want to
Service.
keep this respectful with you, and I don't mean to
Yes.
step over you. One more question, Mayor Bowser. Is cracking down on crime racist, as many of your Democrat colleagues have suggested?
Our police department
Yes
has
or no,
been
is it racist, ma'am?
not in DC.
Thank you, ma'am. Chairman Mendelson, you believe that cracking down on crime is racist, correct? No? Is that not what you said? You said bringing in large numbers of federal or National Guard troops can escalate tensions, particularly in minority neighborhoods. You also stated that federal deployments can disrupt daily life, disproportionately affect minority communities, and exacerbate racial tensions. So,
Are you asking about the National Guard or law enforcement?
I said federal or National Guard troops.
I do
And
think that,
we've seen police presence decrease under this council, and funding be redirected. So
That's false.
I really don't care to hear
That is
how
false.
pro-police you are, because I've seen those numbers decrease over the years and funding be stripped. And so with the National
we have
Guard,
not stripped funding in 4 years.
it has happened, and
Not
crime
in
has
4 years.
increased.
What has happened in
Chairman
4 years
Mendelson,
is that
if I
we've
may,
not been reimbursed
so the
$83
federal
million by the
deployments
federal
can
government for
disrupt these
police.
things, and you said that they can exacerbate racial tensions. So is it racist to bring in?
Militarization is oppressive
Is it
to
racist?
neighborhoods.
Chairman?
No.
No. Okay, so are you redacting your statement and your
No.
position?
Militarization is a problem. I did not say that was racist, but it is a problem.
Mr. Chairman, you said that it increases racist tensions. So I would say that you are characterizing that as racist, bringing them in. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired.